here's the comparison. Here's the two comparisons that I want to make. So what the Wolves are doing right now is they're shredding the roster. They're trading everybody and they're bringing in new blood
Fire sale.
in the form of, well, not exactly. It's like a half fire sale, but it's also bringing in another star player in D'Angelo Russell. So it's really a complete clearing out of the roster around their one-star player and then bringing in all new guys to say, all right, what we had going wasn't working, so this isn't a retooling. This is a complete clearing out and bringing in new players who are of the star level of the guys that they got rid of, but they think it's going to be different because of who they're bringing in. But the point that we've been talking about for the last 2 hours on the show is whether the star player that they're building it around can ever really get them where they want to go. Does this start to sound familiar now? And I got an email comparing Karl-Anthony Towns, who you don't know much about, to Kirk Cousins. Now, I'll let you know about Karl-Anthony Towns, Alex, so you can understand the comparison. Great stats, no winning. Doesn't play defense, has some fundamental flaws in his game, and then it's compared or combined with, I would say, like, softness is kind of maybe a rude way to put it, but not the most burning desperately to win basketball games guy. Like a star player who puts up big points, but he's been on the floor for 16 straight losses, which you know, Alex, at least enough to know about basketball, that stars usually dominate. There's only 5 players out there. They play the whole game, so usually they dominate. And I think there's somewhat of a fair comparison there with Kirk Cousins and Karl-Anthony Towns. Kirk is more professional than Karl-Anthony Towns has been. But the idea that someone has fundamental flaws in their game and that you have to reshuffle everything around them every couple of years because there's always some other answer than the glaring thing in front of you, which is the quarterback, I think would be the comparison here.
Well, I guess that would be fair. Yeah, okay. I'm confused as to what you're asking.
Okay, so the question then for you is Kirk Cousins like that? Is that fair to make that comparison to say that the fundamental flaws of the most important position, the most valuable position, are too great for the Minnesota Vikings to put anything else around it that will help you overcome it and get where you want to go?
No, that's not true. Football is very different. You can put pieces in front of him to protect him more. You can give him more weapons around him to make him become more lethal on the field. I mean, football is but the problem becomes always the same thing as the cap, because eventually you have to start putting in a lot of money in certain positions. Like, like we had talked in the email you'd sent out about all the cap space. Like, if you have that much cap space, you really don't even have that much. If you're looking at it, you're like, wow, $40 million, you don't even have that much money anymore. That's not what it used to be. So could you do it? You could, but the chances in all likelihood of actually getting it to the point to where Kirk Cousins would be comfortable enough in a pocket to go out and not freak out in the fourth quarter, or, you have to worry about him taking a hit. That's the biggest problem when you're talking about Kirk, is you have to keep him calm for 4 full quarters. Like, you can't be ever a part where it's like, oh my God, he kind of went off the deep end. It's okay. He'll bring himself back around. No, you have to keep him through this the entire way. Like, hey, we're good the entire time. Those are the games that he comes out and has great numbers. Those are the games that everyone's like, man, he played great. Yeah, nobody really pressured him. The offensive line played great. The run game really complimented him. Everything looked really good. But then all of a sudden you get in the game where he gets hit in the second quarter and you're like, uh-oh. I don't know where this is going to go, even with all the weapons around him, and even with, the offensive line that he has and the philosophy of their offense. So I don't know that I would say that.
Yeah, and I think that with Karl-Anthony Towns, who you have never seen play basketball, the issue is often just effort and how bad he wants it, where you see other great NBA players pushing it every single night, demanding to win, demanding the basketball at the end of games, stuff like that. I don't think that's necessarily Kirk's issue. It goes along with what you're saying with when he gets taken out of a game, can he find it in him to fight back? And often it isn't. But I also think that that's not so much connected to heart as it is in basketball, as it is that he can't find that extra gear. It doesn't exist. Like, this is a guy who has maximized every ounce of his talent as a 4th round pick out of Michigan State. He's the most prepared guy out there. He's he's eating the best food and doing the best workouts, and he's going to meet with PJ Fleck and all these other people to try and learn as much as he can about sports landscape and leadership and all these things. So he's doing everything he possibly can to maximize his talent, but there's a shortcoming in that he can't move around particularly well. And he's not so quick at diagnosing things like Jimmy G, where you said he hits his back foot and the ball is gone. Well, that's not really the case with Cousins. He holds onto the ball quite a bit, and doesn't have this stupendous arm strength to throw sidearm 50 yards down the field like Patrick Mahomes. And so in a lot of ways, I look at Cousins and I think it's different than Karl-Anthony Towns, because Towns has all the talent in the world as the number 1 overall pick, but also the same that I'm not sure you can ever get enough to put around him with the amount of money he demands.
You talking about Kirk?
Talking about Kirk, right?
I think you could. It's so hard to compare number 1 basketball to football because the guys in basketball play offense and defense.
Mhm.
And can we just say,
Yeah.
I don't understand why those guys don't play defense. Are they trying to conserve energy for the offensive
Okay,
side?
I can help you with this.
Okay, I would love to know.
Well, one, the offenses are so good at scoring and so good at moving the basketball that even if you're trying on defense, it's really, really hard.
So it's not even worth it.
And there are plenty of guys in the NBA who make a massive impact with their defense. And the guys who put in that much effort on defense, which is what everyone wants from Karl-Anthony Towns, those guys usually win a lot, like Jimmy Butler or Rudy Gobert from Utah, like the great defensive players. It is a huge impact if you're really good at it. It's like playing corner in the NFL now. Like, oh, you gave up 5 passes in your direction. Well, I sure did, because all the rules go toward passing and the quarterbacks are amazing. Right. It's a little bit of that. I think it's one of those things where you see 120 points. You go, I guess they didn't play defense. And then you watch Steph Curry hit a 3 from the logo. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
guess
gotcha.
Can't defend that. Anyway.
Right. No, I'm with you. There's not enough to put around Kirk to win it, because you think that he's somewhat, I don't know what would be
fundamentally flawed. It would be
fundamentally flawed. I have a question. At what point do we turn around and go, listen, you guys paid for this. You're just not using it correctly. Like, at some point, the coaches have to become a problem too, right? Because Kirk came in and he commanded this huge contract, and this wasn't the only team that was going to pay him. If I'm not mistaken, the Jets were going to pay him more to go there. But he was like, no, I want to go to Minnesota. I'm going to love it there with Mike Zimmer. So he comes here, and now all of a sudden everyone's like, well, we're not really sure what to do with them. We know what to do with them. Keep them on the move. Keep them bootlegging. Keep them running around. And the problem becomes when you have him standing back there. And yeah, I get it. There's times where he's going to handicap himself. He can't run around the pocket. He has no mobility, like when it comes to being chased. When it's designed, that's different, because you're naturally just going to move that way, and you've done it so many times. But I think that I agree with you. No matter what you put around him, eventually you're going to have to be like, listen, dude, you have the ball. You have to make the plays.
Right.
And can he do that? I mean, there's so many things that make me want to say yes, and so many things that make me want to say no. Like when Dalvin's playing really well, yes, he can be a fixture in this offense. He can be one of the main guys. When the offensive line's playing well and the ball's getting out quickly and CJ Ham becomes an outlet a couple times and all of a sudden everyone's having a good time, he's amazing. The problem becomes that little hiccup. And to me, as a football player, a former player, and a guy who remembers going through the Super Bowl and remembers going through the playoffs, it was the quarterbacks that didn't really have that hitch in their giddy up that got us through there, that got us all the way there. And then the minute that people like started to look around and be like, man, this is great, that's when we started to trip up. Or when guys try to do too much. I think that sometimes that's his biggest flaw. I know for a fact that he is one of the smartest guys on the field. I've talked to him several times. We used to be in the PA together, so we would talk about certain issues. He was extremely relatable, super smart. I think the problem is he tries to do too much. And then all of a sudden, all eyes look at him. Like the minute something goes wrong, everybody looks at him like, dude, fix it. He's not that guy. Mm-hmm. He's not, he's like, he can't be the guy that go in there and be like, listen, man, I got the answer to all these things. He's just like, listen, I got the answer to giving the ball to Dalvin or getting the ball to you on my back foot. But if you're not open, all of a sudden I'm running around and scrambling for my life. So can you put enough pieces around him to get over the hump and be the guy to actually carry the team through the playoffs and win the Super Bowl? I'm kind of with you, man. I don't think so, because of that little hitch that he has.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there's a difference between talking about whether Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback and whether he's worth spending 15% or 16% of your cap.
It's a lot.
That's the two different conversations that I always want to make clear, because Kirk Cousins is an excellent quarterback, who has a ton of talent, right? And was just putting up great numbers this year. And I've referenced a million times the PFF grades and everything else, that everything matches up to, yeah, he had a really good year and he's a very good quarterback. And there's only a handful of quarterbacks in the entire NFL since he became a starter who have higher quarterback ratings than he does. But when we're coming off of the Super Bowl and we're facing such a huge decision to be made, it just made me think about the Wolves are going all in with their superstar who's flawed. And the Vikings went all in with their superstar that's flawed. And for both organizations, it's been kind of the same results. The Vikings have been a little more successful with one playoff win. But if you said when you signed Kirk Cousins, hey, what do you think of one playoff win in 2 years? I think Vikings fans would have went, excuse me? That's it? One playoff win in 2 years? Because they were sold that he was the final piece. And I was thinking about, the fear that we have of replacing somebody who's good, and feeling like you can never find good again because bad might also exist there. And, Gus Farrat was on the show yesterday. I don't know if you know Gus at all, but he's great. And just, we kind of broke it all down. But Gus's career made me think about, him and the Vikings in 2008 making the playoffs with Gus Farrat and Tavares Jackson as the quarterbacks. They made the playoffs one year with Christian Ponder at quarterback and kind of got, the same results that you're getting with Kirk Cousins, where you're 8-7-1, then you're 10-6, and you win one playoff game. And that I would say to both organizations that being afraid of whatever out there exists beyond your centerpiece or beyond your star, can get you into trouble sometimes, I think.
I agree. I think that sometimes I think the problem becomes eventually people are not satisfied with a 10-6 year, as they shouldn't be. Like eventually you have to win the Super Bowl. Eventually you have to go all in for it. And I think the problem that people are having is that they're looking back going, man, did we really go all in for this?
Mm-hmm.
This was our all in chips. Like we threw it all in on this, and all of a sudden we, like you said, have one playoff win to show for it. I like the retooling of football. I think it's great when you interject new blood, especially in key parts. The part that I think people worry most about is quarterback, because that's one of your main fixtures on your team. And if you're look at the Vikings. When it's off, it's off. You can just tell as a fan, as a former player, as whatever it is. When the quarterback is not in sync with the rest of the team, it just looks glaringly bad. And you're like, wow, that is not what we thought we were going to get out of this, but it's okay. We can work around it. We can retool. We can hopefully rely on this piece or that piece. When the truth is, you should be like, no, man, we expected him to win the games, not everybody else around him. We wanted Kirk to come in and take this game over and win it. We didn't need Dalvin to do it. If we wanted Dalvin to do it, we'll pay Dalvin, but we paid Kirk to do it. And now all of a sudden the ball's not getting out like we thought it would. These plays aren't happening like we thought they would. And we have star receivers. We have a great tight end. We have a great running back, and we have nothing to show for it. So people do at the end of the day go, dude, if we're going to go in for some new blood, maybe we should go all in for real this time and get some great pieces around him and protect him, especially because the one thing about Kirk that I've always known is if you get to him early, it's over. Mm-hmm. So you can't put out an offensive line that you're like, well, we're pretty confident this is going to be okay. You needed to be like, listen, we are 100% sure this guy's going to be safe back here. We are like nothing to worry about. That was another thing that looking back was probably like, we probably should have solved that a little bit more too.